The silver Escalade rolled to a stop at the edge of Shenandoah Forest, its chrome rims reflecting the golden dusk settling over the valley. The driver's door opened, and Robert Blackwood emerged, disheveled, sweating through his $1,000 suit. His eyes, once full of charm and control, now looked like black holes. Empty of reason, in his trembling arms was his 8-year-old daughter Lily, limp and drugged. "This is the only way," whispered the slender man in a pale linen suit. Standing beside him, Dr. James Wilson. "The ritual must be completed before moonrise, Robert." With a shaking breath, Robert knelt before an ancient oak. Using delicate silk scarves, he bound Lily's wrist to the thick bark. Her small head lolled forward. "Daddy?" she murmured in a dazed voice, but Robert said nothing. "He couldn't. It'll purify her blood," Dr. Wilson said again, voice cold and sure. "Just like we discussed." Their footsteps crunched through dead leaves as they walked away, car doors slamming shut like coffin lids. But they weren't. Alone, from the thick underbrush, unseen eyes watched. A German shepherd, scarred and silent, crouched low in the shadows. He had seen it all. 2 years earlier, Robert Blackwood had been the symbol of American success, a self-made millionaire, a devoted husband, a proud father. He and his wife, Elizabeth, had built a life of wealth and warmth in a Virginia mansion, the kind featured in glossy magazines. But that world cracked when Elizabeth fell ill. A rare autoimmune disorder took her piece by piece. Robert had tried everything, liquidated assets, slept in hospital chairs, held her hand until her final breath. When she died, so did the best part of him. He never recovered. Enter Dr. Wilson, the man who claimed he could fix what traditional medicine couldn't. Smooth-talking, mysterious, full of ancient knowledge. What Robert didn't know was that Wilson was actually James Henderson, Elizabeth's estranged brother, a disgraced med school dropout with a decades-old grudge. He blamed Robert for her death, and he had waited for the perfect moment to strike. Meanwhile, the shepherd known only as Shadow lived with scars both visible and buried deep. He was once Virginia's top search and rescue dog, hero of 17 missions. But a fire had claimed his handler. Mark. Shadow had saved a child from that blaze, but couldn't reach Mark through the flames. Deemed unstable after that, he was dumped at the forest's edge, forgotten. Until tonight, not far from the ritual site, Martha Sullivan was peeling potatoes at her farmhouse near the woods. She had been Elizabeth's hospice nurse, strong, sharp-eyed, and kind. And she remembered every detail of Elizabeth's decline, including how strange her brother's visits had been. Martha knew something never added up about the way Elizabeth died, but she had kept quiet until now. In the forest, Lily stirred. Her head ached. Her mouth was dry. Her arms hurt. She tried to move but felt the strange tightness around her wrists, scarves tied tightly. "Daddy?" she whispered again. No answer. Only wind and the chorus of crickets. Tears slipped down her cheeks. Her breathing grew shallow, wheezing dangerously close to triggering her asthma. And then a rustle in the brush, a growl. She froze. 20 feet away, a large figure stepped into the moonlight. Ears perked, eyes alert. A jagged scar across one shoulder. Shadow. The dog stood still, studying her. Double quotes, please. "Don't hurt me," Lily whimpered. Shadow tilted his head, then slowly, deliberately stepped forward and sat down. Calm, watchful, protective. Minutes passed in silence. "Are you lost too?" Lily whispered. Shadow's ears twitched. Then, unexpectedly, he vanished into the forest. Lily's heart sank. Even the dog had abandoned her, but he came back. In his mouth was a wet cloth, a soaked handkerchief from the nearby stream. He laid it gently near her tied hands. You brought me water?" She gasped. Her fingers grasped it awkwardly. The taste of earth and coolness filled her dry mouth. Relief. Then Shadow pawed at her shoes. "My laces?" she asked. And then it clicked. With clumsy fingers and desperate effort, she and Shadow used the shoelaces to work the knots loose. Freedom came slowly. But it came. Lily stood shakily, rubbing feeling back into her arms. Her legs trembled, but Shadow stayed beside her. "I'm Lily," she said. "I'm going to call you Shadow, because you came from the shadows to help me." He wagged his tail once. Had no map, no food, no flashlight, but she wasn't alone. They walked through the forest together, child and dog, moving through patches of moonlight. Eventually, they found shelter under a fallen tree, a hollow space just large enough to crawl into. Lily curled against Shadow's warm body, her small hand wrapped around a silver locket. Inside it, a photo of her parents. And tucked behind it, Elizabeth's handwritten note: "If you're ever lost, trust your heart, and never forget how loved you are." Tears slid down Lily's face as she clutched the locket to her chest. "I don't know why Daddy did this," she whispered, "but I'm going to live for Mommy." Shadow licked her hand. The forest whispered around them, but inside that small shelter, hope began to flicker. To be continued. If you were moved by this story, leave a like, share your thoughts in the comments, and tell us where you're watching from. Because sometimes, even in the darkest places, a broken dog and a forgotten child can find each other and survive. This, she whispered into Shadow's fur. "He's been different since Mommy died. Dr. Wilson said I have the same sickness she did, but the school nurse said I just have asthma." She paused, remembering my inhaler. Frantically, she checked her pockets, relief flooding her when her fingers closed around the rescue inhaler. At least she had this small protection against her most immediate health threat. "We'll figure this out tomorrow," she told Shadow, her eyelids growing heavy despite her circumstances. "Maybe Daddy will come back for me." But even as she spoke the words, a part of her knew better. The father, who had stroked her hair during thunderstorms, would never have left her tied to a tree in the wilderness. That father was gone, replaced by a hollow-eyed stranger who saw threats in shadows and illness in every cough. Shadow shifted, curling his body protectively around the small human. His posture conveyed what he couldn't say in words. "I will keep watch." Dawn broke with bird calls and dappled light through leaves. Lily awoke disoriented, momentarily forgetting where she was until the events of the previous night crashed back. Shadow was gone from her side, sending a spike of panic through her chest until she spotted him just outside their makeshift shelter, alert and watching. "Morning," she croaked, her throat dry. Shadow's tail wagged in greeting. At his feet lay a small pile of berries. "Erithos for me?" Lily crawled out, examining the offering. Blueberries, wild ones, smaller than store-bought, but recognizable. "How did you know these are safe?" Shadow just watched as she cautiously tasted one, then hungrily devoured the rest. They barely took the edge off her growing hunger, but the gesture touched something deep in her heart. "We need to find water," she said, rising to her feet with renewed determination. "And then people who can help us." Shadow led her to a small stream where she drank deeply and refilled her inhaler case with water for later. As she splashed her face, trying to wash away the lingering grogginess from whatever medication had been in her system, Shadow suddenly stiffened, ears forward. "What is it?" Lily whispered, instantly alert to his change in demeanor. A rustling in the underbrush answered her question as a raccoon waddled into view. Before Lily could react, Shadow was in motion, not attacking, but herding the creature away from their position with practiced efficiency. "You're protecting me," Lily realized aloud when he returned. "Thank you." They traveled for most of the day, Shadow setting a pace that challenged Lily but never exceeded her capabilities. When her breathing grew labored, climbing a steep ridge, he stopped without prompting, waiting until her respiration normalized before continuing. His intuitive understanding of her limitations struck Lily as remarkable. Late afternoon brought their first stroke of luck, an abandoned hunter's cabin nestled in a small clearing. The simple structure had clearly seen better days. Its roof partially collapsed on one side, windows long since shattered, but the portion thatch remained standing offered more protection than they'd had. "Hello," Lily called cautiously before entering. "Is anyone here?" The cabin's silence answered her. Inside, dust covered every surface, but there was an old iron stove, a broken chair, and most promising of all, a shelf with some forgotten supplies. A rusted can opener, matches in a waterproof container, and a single can of beans. "Dinner, Lily," announced triumphantly, holding up the can. Shadow's tail wagged in apparent agreement. That night, with a small fire crackling in the stove and the luxury of beans shared between them, Lily felt a fragile sense of accomplishment. They had survived the first day. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now, this modest shelter and the loyal presence of her newfound protector were enough. "My mommy used to say that summertime sangles don't have wings," she told Shadow as they settled for sleep, her hand absently stroking his coarse fur. "Sometimes they have paws." Shadow rested his head on his paws, his eyes reflecting the dying embers of their fire, a silent sentinel against the gathering darkness outside. Martha Sullivan hiked with the steady, unhurried pace of someone who had walked these trails for decades. At 67, her body might have slowed, but her mind remained sharp as the pocket knife she'd carried since her father gave it to her on her 12th birthday. The morning air held that particular Virginia sweetness, honeysuckle and pine, with undertones of fertile earth that always reminded her why she'd returned to her family's land after retirement. Her walking stick thumped rhythmically against the path as she collected herbs for her remedies. Martha had no patience for those who called her methods alternative medicine. Long before pharmaceutical companies packaged healing into pills, her grandmother had treated half the county with these same plants. Some knowledge was too valuable to abandon for convenience. The faint wisp of smoke caught her attention first, barely visible against morning sky, but unmistakable to experienced eyes. Smoke meant fire, and Dunatondid fire in Shenandoah was trouble, especially after the dry spell they'd been having. "Careless hikers," she muttered, adjusting her course toward the source. As she neared the dilapidated hunter's cabin, a relic from her uncle's generation, Martha slowed, caution tearing curiosity. The thin tendril of smoke came from the cabin's crooked chimney, though she'd known the place to be abandoned for at least 15 years. Martha approached quietly, decades of nursing having taught her that observation before action saved lives. Through a broken window, she glimpsed movement inside, something large and dark, a bear, perhaps. She gripped her walking stick tighter, prepared to retreat if necessary. Then she heard it, a child's voice, soft but distinct. "Good boy, Shadow. You're the best dog ever." Martha's heartbeat quickened. "Ackled out here alone." She moved to the cabin's warped door and knocked firmly. The response was immediate. A deep, threatening growl from within followed a silence. "Hello," Martha called. "I'm not here to hurt anyone. I live nearby." After a long pause, a small voice responded, "Are you going to take me back to my dad?" The question carried such raw fear that Martha felt it like a physical blow. "I don't know who your father is, child. I'm just an old woman who saw smoke." More silence, then the sound of whispered consultation. That child apparently speaking to the dog. Finally, the door creaked open a few inches, revealing a slice of a girl's face. One hazel eye, a smudged cheek, and tangled chestnut hair. "If you try to grab me, Shadow will bite you," the girl warned, her voice steadier than her trembling hand on the door. Behind her loomed the dark shape Martha had glimpsed. An enormous German shepherd with alert ears and watchful eyes positioned protectively at the child's side. "I believe you," Martha said calmly. "May I come in? It looks like rain's coming, and these old bones don't need more dampness." The girl studied her with an intensity beyond her ears, then nodded once, opening the door wider. As Martha stepped inside, the dog Shadow moved between them, his posture communicating clear boundaries. "My name is Martha Sullivan. I have a farm about 2 miles east of here. I'm Lily," the girl offered cautiously. "This is Shadow. He found me when I was tied to a tree." Martha's heart constricted at the matter-of-fact way Lily delivered this horrifying information. Tied to a tree? Who would do such a thing? Lily's gaze dropped to the rough wooden floor. "My dad and Dr. Wilson, they said it was to make me better." The pieces assembled themselves in Martha's mind. A sick ritual, a vulnerable child, a manipulated parent. She'd seen enough abuse in her nursing career to recognize the pattern, if not the specifics. When was this, Lily? 5 days ago. Lily gestured to marks on her wrists, healing, but still visible. "Shadow helped me get free. We've been hiding here." Martha surveyed the cabin. The carefully rationed can of beans, the makeshift bed of pine boughs, the small pile of wild berries. "You've done remarkably well for yourselves," she acknowledged, genuine respect in her voice. "But you can't stay here much longer." Fear flashed across Lily's face. "Are you going to call the police?" It was the logical question, the legally correct question. Any responsible adult would contact authorities immediately. But something in Lily's expression, coupled with Martha's own instincts, honed through decades of witnessing institutional failures, gave her pause. "Not just yet," Martha decided, surprising herself. "First, I think you need a proper meal and a safe place to rest. Would you and Shadow consider coming to my farm? Just until we figure things out." Lily looked uncertainly at Shadow, who had maintained his vigilant position throughout the conversation. "What do you think, boy? Can we trust her?" The dog's intelligent eyes studied Martha with unnerving focus. Then, slowly he approached her, sniffing her outstretched hand before gently pressing his nose against it. "A tentative endorsement, I guess." "That's a yes," Lily said, the ghost of a smile appearing. The walk to Martha's farmhouse took longer than usual, with frequent rest for Lily, whose thin frame and occasional wheezing concerned Martha's experienced eye. Shadow never strayed more than a few feet from the child, constantly scanning their surroundings with military precision. As they crested the final hill, Martha's property came into view. 15 acres of rolling pastures surrounding a 2-story white farmhouse with a wraparound porch. Chickens pecked contentedly in the side yard, and an ancient apple orchard stretched beyond the barn. "It's like a storybook," Lily breathed momentarily, forgetting her caution. "It's home," Martha replied simply. "Been in my family for 4 generations. Not fancy, but it's got everything we need." Inside, the house welcomed them with the comforting smells of beeswax and cinnamon. Martha settled Lily at the kitchen table and set about preparing soup and cornbread. While surreptitiously observing her young guest, the girl's clothes were filthy, her hair matted. But what struck Martha most was the weary intelligence in those hazel eyes, eyes that reminded her of someone. "Lily, would you like to wash up before we eat? I can find you some clean clothes. They'll be too big, but better than what you're wearing now." While Lily bathed in the clawfoot tub upstairs, Martha made a phone call to her oldest friend, Sheriff Deputy Frank Coleman. "Frank, it's Martha. I need information, not official attention. Understand?" On the other end, Frank sighed. "Martha Sullivan, what hornet's nest have you poked now? Has there been a missing child report in the last week?" Girl about 8 named Lily? A pause then? Nothing official, but there's talk about Robert Blackwood's daughter. He's claiming she wandered off during a camping trip, but the timing of his report was suspicious. We did a cursory search where he indicated found nothing. Robert Blackwood, Martha repeated, the name triggering a memory. The real estate developer whose wife died at County General 2 years ago, that's him. Been acting strangely lately, according to his staff. Why are you asking, Martha? Just curious about local news, she deflected. Call it an old woman's nosiness. After hanging up, Martha stood motionless in her kitchen, pieces connecting in her mind. Elizabeth Blackwood, the young woman with the rare autoimmune disorder who died despite everyone's best efforts. Martha had been her night nurse during those final weeks. Elizabeth with her hazel eyes and chestnut hair. So liketh child currently in Martha's bathtub, Shadow padded into the kitchen, his nails clicking on the hardwood floor, breaking Martha's reverie. The dog regarded her with what seemed like expectation. I'm not calling authorities yet, Shed told him, feeling only slightly foolish for addressing an animal so directly. Something's not right here, and I want to understand it before I potentially make things worse. Shadow's ears twitched, and for a wild moment, Martha felt he understood every word. When Lily came downstairs and rolled up jeans and one of Martha's old flannel shirts, her damp hair combed smooth. Fit transformation was striking. Beneath the dirt had been a beautiful child with her mother's features and something of her father's determined jaw. They ate soup and cornbread in companionable silence, Shadow lying at Lily's feet, accepting occasional offerings with gentle politeness. After the girl had cleared her bowl, did Martha broach the subject. Lily, I need to ask you some difficult questions. Is that okay? The weariness returned to Lily's posture, but she nodded. Your full name is Lily Blackwood, isn't it? Your mother was Elizabeth. Surprise widened the girl's eyes. You knew my mom? I was one of her nurses near Fiend. She was a remarkable woman, brave and kind, even when she was suffering. Martha paused, weighing her next words carefully. I remember your father, too. He was devoted to her. Spent every possible moment at the hospital. Billy's face clouded. That was before he changed after she died. He started seeing Dr. Wilson, who said I was sick like Mom. Her small hand unconsciously moved to her chest. But I just have asthma. The school nurse checked me lots of times. And this Dr. Wilson, he's the one who convinced your father to leave. You in the forest. Lily nodded, tears welling. He said it would purify my blood. Dad used to protect me from everything. And then suddenly he was listening to Dr. Wilson instead of me. A tear spilled over. It's like he forget how to love me. Shadow immediately responded to Lily's distress, pressing his large head against her lap. The girl's fingers automatically buried themselves in his fur, drawing comfort. From the contact, Martha's nursing instincts whirred with her growing concern about the situation. Officially, she should contact Child Protective Services immediately, but her decades in healthcare had shown her how easily systems could fail the vulnerable. If Robert Blackwood was under someone's manipulation and wealthy enough to influence outcomes, the system might return Lily directly to danger. Lily, I believe you, Martha said finally. And I think you and Shadow should stay here while I learn more about what's happening with your father and this Dr. Wilson. You won't make me go back. Hope and fear battled in Lily's voice. Not until I'm certain you'll be safe, I promise. Martha knew she was potentially crossing legal and ethical lines, but her moral compass pointed clearly. Tomorrow we'll talk more. For tonight you need rest. In the spare bedroom, Martha made up the twin bed with fresh linen scented with lavender. Shadow inspected every corner of the room before apparently approving the arrangement. When Martha moved to leave, Lily's small voice stopped her. Martha, at night, Sometimes I can't breathe right. My inhaler helps, but I'll leave me door open, Martha assured her. And Shadow will alert me if you need help, won't you, boy? The dog's steady gaze seemed to accept this responsibility. Later that night, Martha sat at her kitchen table with Elizabeth Blackwood's medical file, one of several she'd kept copies of after retirement, unable to fully disconnect from patients who had touched her heart. She remembered Robert Blackwood's frantic research, the specialist flown in from across the country, his refusal to accept the diagnosis until the very end. What could transform such devotion into the kind of desperation that would abandon a child? And who was this Dr. Wilson who wielded such influence? Outside, a gentle rain began to fall, pattering against the tin roof. Martha's farm stood solid against the elements as it had for generations. Within its walls, a lost girl and a forgotten dog had found temporary sanctuary, while somewhere beyond the rain, forces were gathering that would soon test them all. Martha closed the file and whispered a prayer her grandmother had taught her, not to any specific deity, but to whatever forces in the universe might listen. Guide these hands to help, not harm. Show the path to healing what's broken. In the spare bedroom, Lily slept peacefully for the first time in days, one hand resting on Shadow's head by the bed. The dog's eyes remained open, watchful in the darkness, guarding against threats both seen and unseen. Life at Martha's farm fell into a rhythm that brought color back to Lily's pale cheeks. Mornings began with collectings from the hen house, Shadow padding alongside her with a woven basket gently held in his mouth. The German Shepherd had taken to farm life with surprising ease, as though he'd been waiting for a purpose beyond survival. He's not just smart, Martha remarked one morning, watching Shadow herd a wooed chicken back to its coop. That dog understands things most humans miss, Lily nodded unsurprised. He knew I needed help before I even called out, and he always knows when my chest is going to get tight, even before I do. It was true. Twice now Shadow had alerted Martha to Lily's impending asthma attacks, unspawing insistently at the older woman's leg until she followed him to where Lily was gardening, and again waking Martha from a deep sleep minutes before Lily began wheezing in the night. Each time his warning provided crucial extra moments to administer medication. Some animals just have a gift, Martha said, not mentioning that she discreetly called her friend Dr. Sarah Williams, the local veterinarian, to examine Shadow while Lily napped one afternoon. This dog has extensive training, Sarah had whispered. After observing Shadow's behavior, the scar on his shoulder looks like a burn injury, but it's healed well. And Martha, he has a microchip. The information from the microchip had been illuminating. Shadow, officially named Commander, had been one of Virginia's most decorated search and rescue dogs until an incident 2 years prior. The sparse official record mentioned only that his handler had perished in a structural fire and that Commander had been retired from service due to behavioral concerns. What the record didn't explain was how such a valuable, highly trained animal had ended up abandoned in Shenandoah National Park, or why he had attached himself so completely to Lily. Meanwhile, Martha had been conducting her own investigation into Dr. James Wilson. Frank Coleman provided what little information was available. The man had appeared in Millfield about 18 months ago, establishing a holistic wellness practice that catered exclusively to Taufi clients. No hospital affiliations, no peer-reviewed publications, just glossy brochures and testimonials from those claiming miraculous recoveries. Something about him doesn't add up, Frank admitted during one of his casual visits to Martha's farm. Visits that carefully avoided officially acknowledging Lily's presence. His credentials check out on paper, but there's gaps in his history. And he's gotten mighty cozy with some influential folks around here, Blackwood being just one of them. Martha kept these concerns to herself, not wanting to burden Lily with adult suspicions. Instead, she focused on creating stability for the child. Regular meals, gentle routine, and space to process her trauma. Each night, Martha would sit in the rocking chair beside Lily's bed, knitting while the girl shared fragments of her story. Her mother's long illness, her father's gradual transformation from protector to stranger, and the growing influence of Dr. Wilson. He would come for dinner 3 times a week. Lily explained one evening, Shadow's head resting heavily in her lap. At first, he just talked to Daddy about Mom and how sad it was to lose her. But then he started talking about me, saying I had the same energibilance Mom had. That's when Daddy started looking at me differently, like he was scared of me. Martha's needles clicked steadily, her face betraying none of the anger building inside her. And the medication started after that. Lily nodded. Little pills at first, then shots that made me sleepy. Dr. Wilson said they were cleansing my system, but they just made him feel awful. She absently fingered the locket around her neck, a silver oval Martha had noticed she never removed. The school nurse got worried because I was missing so much school. That's when Daddy took me out completely. Said we'd homeschooling, but we never did. Shadow whined softly, sensing Lily's distress. The girl immediately shifted her attention to comforting him, a pattern Martha had observed repeatedly, each caring for the other's emotional needs with intuitive precision. During the day, Lily took to training Shadow with a natural aptitude that amazed Martha. The command started simply, sit, stay, come, but quickly progressed to complex sequences that showcased the dog's intelligence. Shadow, find my inhaler, Lily would say, and the dog would search the house until he located the medication, carrying it gently back to her. Shadow, get Martha. She'd command from the apple orchard, and he would race to wherever Martha was working, using different barks to indicate urgency. What began as practical safety measures evolved into an impressive repertoire of skills. Shadow learned to retrieve specific items by name, to open doors with rope pulls Lily installed, even to bring Martha's phone when instructed. Each new accomplishment strengthened the bond between girl and dog, creating a partnership that transcended ordinary pet owner relationships. You're a natural dog trainer, Martha observed one afternoon as Lily put Shadow through an obstacle course they'd created using farm equipment. Ever doing it professionally someday? Lily's face lit up at the suggestion, then dimmed just as quickly. If I get to stay free, she said quietly. If Daddy doesn't find me. The reality of their situation was never far from mine. 2 weeks after Lily's arrival, Robert Blackwood appeared on local news, offering a $50,000 reward for information about his missing daughter. The man on screen bore little resemblance to the successful businessman Martha remembered from the hospital. His eyes were sunken, his speech slightly slurred, his normally impeccable appearance disheveled. He looks drugged, Martha murmured, watching the broadcast after Lily had gone to bed. Frank nodded grimly. "Me thoughts exactly. But without probable. 'Cause we can't exactly march into Blackwood Estate and demand a talk screen." The interview was brief but disturbing.